Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Laura Skinner, and in each episode, we'll uncover the stories behind successful startups, the challenges faced along the way, and of course, the strategies driving their future expansion. Today, we're excited to have Alex, the founder of SaaStock, with us. Alex will be sharing more about his founding story and, of course, giving us a glimpse into his plans for future growth. So let's jump right in, Alex, and welcome to Founders Future.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So take us back to the beginning for the listeners. What do you solve in the marketplace? And of course, what inspired you to start?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so the beginning dates back to 2015, but predominantly what SaaStock does is we help B2B SaaS founders grow their businesses. We do
Love it.
this through our conferences, our community, through better support, education, and connections. We want SaaStock to be the home for B2B SaaS and B2B SaaS founders specifically. And we're also then kind of moving with AI over the last a couple of years now to try and help SaaS companies and founders understand how they can become AI first businesses. So effectively, that's what we do. Why did I start it? There was never a grand design to do this, but I'd always been entrepreneurial. Ever since a young boy, to be honest, always wanted to make money, was always trying to sell things, getting a paper round, working at McDonald's as soon as I was old enough, or just under the age of 16, I think you'd start at McDonald's and work there for 2 years to get some money and doing 12-hour shifts, etc. And then I think when I got to 18, actually just before I was 18, I thought I'd be a nightclub promoter. And so I started putting on drum and bass raves in Croydon.
Love it. I've
And
been to one in Croydon. Maybe it was
yeah,
you.
no, I don't know if you're old enough to have come to one of mine, but this would have been many years ago. And I ran three of them. The first one made money. The second one broke even. The third one lost money. And then that kind of put a kibosh on my dream. After that experience of losing money, I was like, I better go to university. I thought I was going to be a promoter, but I ended up doing a bit of travel and going to uni. But then I had lots of entrepreneurial ideas through my 20s, but actually I had no drive to explore those. And I always thought capital was the limitation, right? So I'd identify an opportunity and then go, oh, but I haven't got any money, so I can't do it, right? And I never really explored beyond that, like how to start up a business and if you didn't have the capital. But as I turned 30, I thought the clock was ticking. I didn't really have this idea for SaaStock. But what I did then, I wanted to just start doing different things and push myself outside my comfort zone. I thought I'd start a blog. I started researching because I was selling cloud computing. I thought I'd write a blog about cloud computing to help me become a trusted advisor to the people that I was selling to. And then as I was researching that, I identified that what was out there at the time was either VCs that were blogging or vendors that were blogging, but with the ulterior motive of we want to convert people through the funnel and for them to become customers. So I identified what I thought was a gap of actually, why don't we have a like community driven SaaS blog where there is no motive about buy a product, right? But actually like, how can we help you to become better, become a better founder, grow your business? And with my limitations on not really being a writer or not having run a SaaS business, I put myself in an editor role and just reached out to lots of people, recruited them to write content without being paid for it. And the reason they did that was they believed in the why of what we were doing and not what we were doing. And then that kind of took off, right? And I was doing that whilst I had a full-time job. And then I supplemented that with a podcast and then a newsletter. And I started doing SaaS meetups. Before I knew it, I built an audience, but I had a full-time job. I was working part-time on it. I was working from home and excited about what was called SaaScribe at the time and starting to lose a little bit interest in the cloud computing software that I was selling. And eventually I had to kind of make a decision, like, am I going full-time into this? What can I do there? And because I built an audience, they had also told me that they wanted a conference. They wanted an event in Europe to come together. And that's when SaaStock was born. And I put on the first conference in 2016. 700 founders from 34 countries came to that event. And because I'd done a little bit of that hard work, the grassroots stuff, that meant that there was an engaged audience to come and buy the tickets. And also there wasn't anything else for them at the time. So my timing was really good. If you fast forward to today, I think there's now 7 or 8 SaaS conferences in Europe. It's arguably too much.
I agree.
But back then there was nothing, and we were the first, and that was really what catapulted us and helped us scale in the early days.
This is awesome. And I've been in SaaS my entire career. So this is great because normally I'm speaking to like coaches and consultancies. But how do you, so this is, I understand the solution, etc. So how do you actually go about acquiring your customers? So I know that you say you have 700 people at events, but then are they converting
Sure.
into actual customers? Walk us
Yeah.
through a little bit about that.
Yeah, 700 at the first. If we look at the last one, there was 3,500 at our European, and we've
So
expanded into the US as well. And our next US, SaaS USA, will have 1,500. How do we get these folks there? If I look at the very first one, whilst it was largely through content, but also network. It was network driven, right? My newsletter at the time of the first SaaStock conference, we probably only had a couple of thousand people on that list, right? And so it was quite small from a conversion rate perspective of like how many driving 700 purchases through that. Like the strategy was simple: build an audience, create content, build an audience. So the content was the blog, it was the podcast. Then I was doing in-person meetups, the newsletter, and then selling tickets via email. But it had limitations based on the size of the email list that I had. And email was working much better, much cleaner, much less competition like back then.
yeah,
But what really helped drive the tickets was I was getting speakers that were really invested in this event, that really wanted this European conference, and because there was no other competition as well, they were also like driving a couple of ticket sales each per speaker. We had 60 speakers. They all helped drive ticket purchases. And that ultimately, these component parts like helped us get to this 700 people. There was a lot, there was 12 months of hard work on me doing sales and marketing for that first event. And arguably I was doing too much,
cool.
posting on Twitter at 11 o'clock at night and when I probably didn't need to. And that's very much changed. But if I look at then today, content is still like very important and at the heart of SaaStock, but also the market is saturated. There's so much, everything is out there now, right? There's so much content out there. It's really hard to cut through the noise. And so getting that engaged audience through content is a little bit more challenging, but we work with that. But certainly like email as part of our GTM, and we have a much bigger list now, is something that really from a ticket perspective helps us. But then we also do a lot on social, and then we do a lot of, I guess, kind of like smaller kind of in-person events, like SaaStock local stuff, dinners, etc. There's a lot of like grunt work and almost like hand-to-hand combat that goes into it as well. But separately, because we know that as we scale, there is that sort of like limitation to our own audience, and you have to go outside of your own audience. Again, there's a slightly different sort of network effects that we bring into this now. This is partly that the speaker strategy that I had in 2016 doesn't really work now. Speakers are not really promoting that they're talking at the conference. And even if they are, it's a very small percentage. They'll do it just before the event. And it doesn't really help because it's almost too late at that point. So we try to activate the audience and tap into their network. And then we also tap into partners that have similar audiences as well to expand the reach. And so whether that they're like a media partner, whether they're sponsoring the events, whether we have good relationships with them and they have existing communities, we're tapping into these audiences. So there's a number of things from the, let's say, delegate acquisition perspective that we need to do, but we constantly are looking at building and developing and having an engaged audience that are really getting value from us and have like an attachment to the SaaStock brand. But
Yeah.
probably 70% of our revenue also then comes from sponsorships. So that is really sales driven, right? There is a lot of outbound. We're using now like specific tools for that. But also because I mentioned there's 7 or 8 SaaS conferences in Europe, there's a couple in the US, it's almost becoming a bit commoditized. And so then how do you break out of like, how do you stand out when there are all these different options? It's helpful that we're the number one in Europe by size, by revenue, probably by value as well. So we have that a stronger brand, or perhaps the strongest brand in Europe. But something that I look to and constantly trying to enforce is around building customer relationships and having core relationships with customers. So to help us win and really going over and above on customer service to help us stand out maybe from the rest.
100%. Like it's just so pivotal. It's just like actually looking after your customers. Have you ever, so just listening to all of that, I understand, I think it's awesome. I love this space, I love it. So have you ever thought about exploring paid media?
You know what? We do paid media every year. We're not very good at it, and we often outsource it. And we find it very hard on the attribution side with our business. We can and have all the tracking in place for attribution. But typically, let's say we just launched SaaStock USA yesterday, right? And the event is in May. So you send out an email yesterday, maybe you set up some ads, right? It starts an awareness sort of process where people are like, oh, this event is happening, it's on these dates. And there is a longer process from a decision making where when people are looking at B2B events, and us in particular, where their decision making time frame can be, but not always, quite a period of time. In some cases, people's behaviors are like they know the event is in May, they just will not buy until 2 weeks out. But if they see your ads, the main, I would say, like purpose of the ads and all of our marketing is this kind of constant reminder and also articulating the value of what the event is. But where this person then ends up buying, generally they'll come to the website at some point when they're ready to buy. And maybe they make that decision early on in the process, but from when they're actually purchasing, perhaps they'll hold on to their cash for a long time. So I guess the point is like people will see an ad, but generally it's more on awareness and reminding you that this event is happening. And typically, in our experience, they're not clicking on the ad and then purchasing a ticket. There has to be just multiple touch points over a period of time to help convert them and drive them. And often that urgency around the date is often when you see a lot of that conversion, unfortunately. So within events from the delegate revenue side, it can be a little bit like frustrating and stressful, and certainly for the marketing team, that they'll do 6 months of marketing campaigns, yet the majority of the revenue will just come in towards the end. And you're sitting there. I'm not sitting there looking at Stripe and other tickets coming in, but you also don't know 4 weeks out, are we going to hit target? And it's a funny business. But so we do paid ads. We don't think we could definitely do them better. I think we'll continue to do it. But measuring that kind of attribution from our spend is something where it always looks like paid ads don't have any ROI. But
Honestly, oh, I have to share like my knowledge. That's silly to say, but just like we have to speak offline about this of the podcast because I've worked with so many event companies that have said the same thing, and it's always come down to the delivery of the ad and the urgency that's created in the ad and the messaging and the keywords and the way that's whole sequenced. If you drip feed them and you get the sequence right, and you can get the messaging and the keywording right. Like it's the most powerful thing in your space, which is why when you were saying all of those acquisition things to me, I was like, oh my God, you're being so successful in X, Y, and Z. And you've not even mentioned the thing that I'm aware of that's driving all the success of the companies that we work with that are on millions and millions of MRR a month. So
yeah.
it's actually super exciting that like you're doing all this success and like you're saying that you haven't even executed as well as you wanted to in paid media. It's almost just like this can go.
Yeah, no, look, definitely. We're always open to that. We know, I would say, like anecdotally, let's say Web Summit has had a lot of success in their scaling journey and through paid ads. I don't know many other examples. Again, I think you mentioned you've spoken to other events companies. The majority of events companies that I speak to, they're like, some of them don't even do ads because
Yeah, I bet.
they just don't see the success.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but the combination of if you say you've got an outbound team,
It's sales, yeah,
sales
yeah.
outbound. So as long as you've got people in there, but what a lot of people, and I'm giving away some secrets here, but what a lot of people don't leverage is they create this like paid media funnel and they spend loads of money, right? And it's intentionally frictional for then people to actually purchase at the end, for example. But if someone doesn't purchase, they've still gone through the drip feed campaign or whatever you want to call it. And then you have this like pool of data that may have not actually bought a ticket, but are really warm. Can you even imagine the power of having a nurture sequence and emailing them, but you've got their emails through an opt-in funnel or like calling them? Because I think that would not solve a lot of your problems, but I think that's like the key for you guys is you've got all these people that are engaged because they're watching your ads and they're clicking on it, they're just not buying until the end. But imagine if a human called them or they got an email or they got like a nurture campaign before. All that kind of stuff is just huge, right? This stuff gets me fired up.
I can see that, and it's definitely interesting. And like I say, we haven't cracked it, paid ads, so it would be interesting to see if it's a channel that could work for us.
And then what about your sales process? So talk to us and the listeners a little bit about that. So you obviously, we've talked about acquisition. It's an awesome solution. This is like needed, getting saturated, getting competitive. So what's the sales process look like for you guys in your world, if you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've been going for 9 years, right? And obviously had various different
I bet that's
sales
flown.
salespeople, sales leaders within that time. I guess from the European side, we've got a number of customers that have been with us for a long time and continue
Nice.
to grow, or
That's
maybe
awesome.
their budgets stay the same. The big part of our like revenue targets would just be like on renewals, right? And it is like a bit of a silver bullet, but also we can find that our renewal rate certainly could be better, but it's pretty good. So then let's say that we only have to do a certain percentage of new business. Then on the new business side, like I think like for the next year, we're looking a little bit more like into account-based marketing. But
Nice.
effectively, if we
Yeah.
look at, we've got 4 or 5 people on the sales team, various different seniorities. They split the geos. They'll have certain accounts
Nice.
based on certain size and key customers, etc. And with that, we're working against those accounts. We've also implemented recently Ample Market, but very recently, and where I'm hearing very good things, it's bringing in 30 leads a day per rep. We've got 2 reps that are using it, and then they're following on from that. So perhaps like a smarter way of doing outbound. What I found, let's say, like over the last year, so if we look at Q4 23 and Q1 this year, a mistake that we made but recognized a little bit too late was that we weren't doing enough outbound, not enough focus on new business, but mostly focus on the existing customers and renewals. And when that didn't quite marry up to where we wanted it to be, there was a gap because we weren't doing like the new business stuff. So as we came into almost sort of summertime and really then accelerated on doing outbound, we just had so many more conversations, so many more meetings, brought in a number of like new logos, and just getting that combination. And
Love it.
what we've seen, I would say, also kind of like happy to share that over the last 12 months, maybe plus, maybe this is attributed just to what's been happening in the SaaS market over the last 2 years, because it has slowed growth. Software spending has been down, less VC investment. So these things definitely impact businesses like ours, right? Certainly if software spending is down, that our inbounds really reduced, and therefore we had to implement more of an outbound strategy, because actually there would be periods, and maybe if I look at 2022 and maybe even years before that, where we were just getting just a lot of inbound on a constant basis, and that was probably enough for us to help hit our goals. And as that sort of dried up in a part because of the state of the market, then we're having to react to understand, okay, look, what do we need to do to replace the amount of inbounds that have been reduced? And effectively there's a lot more outbound activity. We also go to a lot of in-person events, third-party competitor events. It might not be direct competitors, like Web Summit doesn't really
But
directly
good to get
compete with
knowledge.
us,
Yeah.
but to go there to meet people, generate new opportunities. So it's an ongoing 12-month process split across sales teams.
I love it. So before we wrap, because this has been super inspiring, in the most succinct way possible, because I love this kind of like finalizing question, but you've had 9 years of this, right? So what's your key lessons, key takeaways that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, good stuff. Look, I think one of them is, right, being a founder, running your own business and running a growth business it's never easy, right? There are definitely moments, or a lot of moments, where you're enjoying it and you think you've got the best job in the world, and
Yeah,
sometimes where it's, oh, this can suck a little bit and it's really hard and you're having a hard day. But I think with that persistence, I've never given up, like even through the hard times. Like in the hard times, most important job is probably survive and to get through them. And if you get through
completely
them,
agree.
you're going to be stronger for it. I think if you've got a solid mission that you truly believe in, then it just
Completely
makes
agree.
every day kind of easier. So like, why would you go through all the difficulties or even the stress of running an events business, right,
100%.
if you really didn't believe in the mission and the value that you bring to your audience, right? So I think these things are probably 2 of the first ones. Maybe the final one is that actually things change. Like over the 9 years, we're not necessarily the same business with the same product. We have to change We have to innovate. We have to adapt to the
Of
market.
course.
We have to adapt to the shifts in events. And I like to think that we are getting pretty good at that, right? Because if we don't, and if you don't, you could slow growth, stop growth, you could die, right? I think with that, it's just like being tuned into the customer, the market, and also your industry, and really understanding like what's coming down the road, where do you need to be, and how to level up, keep leveling up your business.
100%. I love it. It's honestly so true, honestly. So that does wrap up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I want to thank Alex for sharing his incredible journey and insights with us today. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future via wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales through trained appointment setters and world-class marketing systems. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.